Hello people of YouTube, I hope everyone's doing well. So this is a video response to Rob, aka the Essex Retro Gamer. Rob has just put out a video concerning what he believes to be the biggest problem in 2021 as it relates to retro video gaming. And I'm really going to paraphrase because you need to check his video out, but the biggest problem is ourselves, it's the community, but more specifically it's kind of paying out, shelling out, perhaps over the odds on a particular game, or I guess particular system. And Rob talks to, I guess, the key driver being a rise in people's disposable income off the back of COVID. So yeah, I'm going to kind of respond to that. I agree to a large part of what Rob's saying, but equally, as I'm sure most people would recognise, I mean, some individuals have less or in fact no disposable income off the back of COVID. Myself, I've been fairly fortunate. I've kept my work, kept my job. I'm lucky enough to be able to work from home. I haven't got a shitty commute to the big smoke. So yeah, I'm saving some money. I'm trying to be a little bit careful, but equally, I'm not going to BS people. I'm spending more on fun stuff. And when there's a few other constraints and you haven't been able to, leave the house for a few weeks or months, or do other kind of interests, then yeah, I've kind of been pumping more money into the collection and gaming and movie stuff and toys and other bits and bobs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I think also at the same time probably a good time to talk about what we can each do to perhaps be a bit more careful ahead of making that big purchase, but also how we can kind of protect and help each other out, again, to make sure that we're not paying crazy amounts of money for certain games. So let's take a look at the responses. So I tend to do things in fives in this channel, so I'm going to talk to 5 reasons as to why I believe video game prices have gone up, and I'm going to be clear and say that this isn't a recent pandemic driven thing. This has been going on for for a few years. Perhaps the pandemic and COVID have accelerated that increase, but they have been steadily heading in the wrong direction for us collectors and gamers. But reason number 1 is that, perhaps an obvious one, but people willingly are paying more for the games themselves. And what I mean by that is perhaps they've got more tolerance as a result of people specifically in that more disposable income bracket, but they've got more money to shell out, so there's a bit more leeway in terms of that kind of upper limit, if there is a limit on what they're willing to push out for a game. Perhaps less kind of preparation and looking at multiple sources. Might just be homing in on one particular site and thinking, well, it is what it is, let's just kind of go for it. And of course, sellers and on a more aggressive scale, scalpers are gonna exploit that. When you're talking about scalpers, exploit that and try and get as much money from the sale as possible. So I think that's reason number 1. So reason number 2, I believe there's more focus on all things retro, so not just gaming but all kind of retro related items. In my opinion, again, I think this is perhaps people hitting their kind of nostalgia years and trying to reclaim items that they had as a kid, which as they lost over the years, or equally getting something that they didn't have as a kid but they wanted from that particular era. So I think kind of nostalgia is kind of kicking in. Of course, COVID hasn't helped in terms of some of those other hobbies that people have, or stuff that they do in their leisure time. They haven't been able to do because of social distancing, other kind of constraints. So that's kind of meant they're spending more time on their gaming hobby, or perhaps people that are a bit on the periphery are now jumping into gaming because it's something that they can do. So all of these things is kind of driving up the amount of demand, but obviously the supply of retro games is a flat line. So yeah, those things combined, the prices will rise. So that's number 2. So reason number 3 is that there's been a slower start for next generation consoles. So obviously with the Sony PlayStation 5 and the Xbox, whatchamacallit, they're not out in the market, which obviously frustrated the company, frustrated the the gamers, and in my opinion, as a result of that, people that perhaps would be shelling out more money on those consoles, or more money on those games, because there's not a lot of true next-gen games that are out. There might be some that are being enhanced, but not that many kind of exclusive titles. So I think those individuals are probably spending their money, their gaming money, on the retro stuff and building out further that collection. So that's number 3. They always get a bad rap, but number 4 is going to be social media. So there has been a real kind of explosion in not just YouTube channels, but Facebook groups, people tweeting. So like gaming recommendations, what's available, what's out there, what's good, what's likely to go up in value, even if it's pure like speculation. It's so much easier and quicker to get from place to place. In the past, you would have been more reliant on your local network of friends, of mates. You might read stuff in a magazine, but there might be a bit of time lag. But now this information is just so easy to come across, and it's an extreme example, but all it would take was one of those top tier YouTubers to put out a top 5 of games and stuff, and guaranteed, if you look at eBay, firstly, a lot of those items, if they were already on there, very quickly going to deplete, and then over the upcoming days and weeks, unfortunately, you're going to see that price go up. But it sounds a bit gloomy, because it's social media. Without that, you wouldn't have awesome YouTube. The community would not really be, it wouldn't be a community, but it wouldn't even exist to the extent it does today. But yeah, regrettably, I think social media still is playing a role in pushing those prices up. So I'm going to cheat a little bit for number 5. I've come up with a couple of kind of smaller drivers, which I'm going to bundle under one. So the first one is that I believe we're seeing a lot more kind of exclusive runs of games put out in smaller, frequencies and batches, and on occasion through the pre-order scheme, all of those copies will have gone even before they're on the old interweb. And regrettably, scalpers, they'll have their eyes on that, and where possible, where that retailers' website controls are a bit crappy, they'll pounce in, buy as many as they can, and obviously put them out for inflated prices. So that's going to happen, unfortunately. And I think the other piece, albeit it's probably a slower kind of decline, these games, the older retro games, they're stopped being made. They're not being produced anymore, and year on year, again, regrettably, people will lose them, games will get broken. Hope it never happens in this family, but say a game collection gets put to the next generation, and the next generation doesn't understand, doesn't appreciate the value, could get thrown out, or not particularly well looked after, and they become kind of spoiled. So yeah, again, so that in a lot of respects, the demand is continuing to go up, but you could argue marginally the supply and the amount of games out there is going downwards year on year. Now what I'm going to talk about is 5 very straightforward recommendations as to what you should be considering when you're about to fork out on a game. And it's not rocket science, otherwise you wouldn't be finding out about it on this channel. Simple ideas, so let's take a look. So number 1, before you even make the purchase, before you even prepare to make the purchase, ask yourself, do I really need this in my collection? Is it a nice to have? Is it a must have? Is it going to complete a vital gap in your collection, or is it just kind of going to sit there unloved? If it's the latter, then perhaps it's not even something you should be buying. There's very, very few games that are truly rare. A lot of games are expensive, but few games that are truly rare. So why not sleep in it? Why not wait a little bit, as opposed to gut reaction, let's just kind of step forward. If something is truly rare and it's out there, it's so unlikely it's going to be on a bloody one-day eBay auction, because whoever's selling it will know its value, and they want as much eyes, as much focus on it, so they're more likely going to leave it for 5 days a week, week plus. So take your time. So number 2, you've got to plan your purchase. You've really got to kind of look into the game itself, look at the places where it's sold, look at the prices. Don't just go in one place and then think, oh, that price is bloody gospel, that's what I'm going to go for. Look at a variety of places, build up that picture as to what you think is you know, an appropriate kind of market price. It might not be reasonable to you, but at least you'll get a view as to what it is. If it's eBay as well, don't just look at you know, what people are currently selling it for. Go to, I think it's on the advanced or the filter bit, look at what it's sold for, look at the completed items to get a better picture, because people have got stuff on there for, you know, 100 bloody grand for a you know, a graded copy of whatever Mario, but are they going to sell it for that price? Unless there's a complete plonker out there, which probably is in some part of the world. It's extremely unlikely. So look at what things actually sold for before jumping in. You know, avoid that impulse buy, and it's so unhealthy those final seconds of eBay as the clock's coming down, and you think, you know, am I going to get this? Am I not? And then all kind of logical thought can quite easily vanish out the window. So make sure you're not in that kind of scenario. You know, make sure you've got a view as to how much you're willing to spend, and just back off, you know, as soon as you treat it like a, you know, it is an auction, but treat it like a proper auction. You know, back off. It hits a certain limit, and it's more than you'd planned, then walk away. Something's probably not right about that. And then also, yeah, don't mix eBay and alcohol. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but yeah, one day I woke up to a horrible hangover, but was immediately sobered up when my phone went, and I realised I'd shelled out 200 quid via eBay on a coin-operated boat. And if I can find a little video of my son enjoying it, I'll put it up here, but my son was the only person who had a smile on his face the next day, so that was fun. So that's number 2. So my third suggestion is to make the most of this awesome gaming community. You know, make others aware of what games you're looking for. It may be that they've got a copy, they may have one on their shelf that they no longer really want. They may see a copy, you know, somewhere else, another site before you do, so they can give you a, well, you know, out on a booty or whatever, they can give you a heads up on that. And also, you know, trading as well is a real win-win, because you're both the seller, you're both the buyer. You're far less likely to get kind of, you know, screwed over, because it'll be a very short term, you know, stupid thing to do. So more kind of security with that. So yeah, make the most of, you know, the people around you before even looking further afield. So number 4, think about whether or not this is a game which is just to be played with, or if it's a game to be played with and to sit nicely on the shelf. If it's the former, then in my opinion, and again it's just my recommendation, I'd suggest you consider other ways to play the game at a cheaper cost. And heaven forbid, because I know some people will shoot me down for saying this, but you know, on certain occasions I'll buy loose cards. I'm not that, say, in terms of, you know, N64 games, even SNES games. I've got a few boxed ones, but mainly like loose card, because I want to play the games. I want the nostalgia kick, but I haven't really got the money. And I know I'm never going to have the broader A to Z collection, so that's fine for me. Also on more modern consoles, they do retro collections like the Sega Classics. Seems to be on every bloody, you know, console, including the Nintendo Switch. So again, it's another way to access those games you want to play at a cheaper price. Even some, you know, some of the retro consoles, a couple behind me, you know, they're awesome. You know, would I go out and buy a PC Engine or, you know, core graphics? No, I don't think I would. You know, I'd rather spend my money on other things. I'm never going to have that full kind of collection, but to have that mini console with a core collection of great games, cheesy pun there, unintended, for me it works. Yeah, it works just fine. So yeah, look at alternative ways. If the, you know, the box and the manual and that completeness and the freshness isn't the kind of the imperative, and the priority is just playing the games, consider other ways to tackle that. Number 5, so consider a different region. And obviously this wouldn't work for, you know, if you've got like a Japanese RPG and you've got a complete lack of the Japanese language, then you're just heading down crap street. But if it's an action game, and you can find it, you know, cheaper in Japan, or even some things, you know, within the US, then why not? So, and by Saturn games, I've got a couple of Saturn games. No way I could afford the kind of the PAL versions, and potentially not even the US ones. So through you know, Japan, I've managed to pick some of those up. So yeah, it's worth looking at for sure. Obviously give consideration around still how much you are paying, because you know there could be, where depending on where you are in the world, but you know, taxes, import charges and stuff, so and you know, increased postage as well, so factor all of those things in. But on occasion I've chosen that option. So that's it guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. Obviously a lot of the points I covered are particularly subjective, so you may agree with some of what I've said, you may disagree with everything I've said, and of course that's absolutely cool, that's absolutely fine. If that is the case, then even more so I'd love you to leave a comment below with your view, just so I can kind of, you know, learn some more from your experiences and your perspectives. That would be fantastic. And I'd be a complete, you know, idiot on a crazy cloud if I thought that, you know, we could engineer stuff to get the prices going in the right direction for us, the wrong direction for the scalpers. But that ain't going to happen. However, what can happen is that we can kind of protect each other, look out for each other, look out for those good deals, good prices, and help each other as a community, which would be pretty cool. If you haven't done so already, as always, yeah, would love you to subscribe. If you like this content, please subscribe and stay close to future videos. I try and put out at least one video a week, sometimes a couple. And that's it. I'll love you and I'll leave you. And I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.